That ending is a prime example of the dramatic principle known as Chekhov's snowplow. If they bother to stick it out there in the middle of nowhere, it is going to figure in the plot. As I mentioned in my intro, writer Sterling Siliphant made the characters of John and Red far more interesting than they were in David Goodis's source novel. That may be what earned him a gig writing 1958's The Lineup for director Don Siegel, which features another pair of crazy mismatched crooks hunting for missing heroin in San Francisco. Those guys were played by Eli Wallach and Robert Keith, Brian Keith's father. I wonder if father and son compared notes on how to convincingly play a nutcase villain. Now, another fun thing Siliphant concocted was the outdoor fashion show shot at the actual J.W. Robinson department store in Beverly Hills. It's right out of an Alfred Hitchcock movie, with Anne Bancroft substituting for Grace Kelly. And it's the store's actual fashion director, Winifred Waring, who acts as the event's MC. I'm sure fans of vintage style, and Noir Alley has a lot of them, got a big kick out of that scene. I just hope Anne Bancroft got to keep the clothes. She'd only been in Hollywood for 5 years, but Bancroft was sour on the business by the time she made Nightfall. She'd made her debut in 1952 opposite Richard Widmark and Marilyn Monroe in Don't Bother to Knock. Not that many people noticed. It was tough for any actress to be noticed in a film featuring Marilyn. Bancroft became unhappy with girlfriend supporting roles, so she left Hollywood for Broadway. She won a Tony in 1960 for The Miracle Worker and returned to the screen in 1962 for the movie adaptation, which won her the Best Actress Oscar. In 1967, she gained iconic status for her portrayal of Mrs. Robinson in The Graduate. Now, while Anne Bancroft earned a reputation as one of the most intelligent and discerning actresses in the business, she passed on a lot of parts that didn't interest her. Her Nightfall co-star, Aldo Ray, earned a lesser rep, especially once his drinking became a real problem. Just too bad, because Aldo Ray was one of the greatest natural actors of the era. He got into movies purely by accident, having accompanied his brother, who wanted to be an actor, on a casting call. But it was Aldo who scored the Hollywood audition. His actual ambition was to be a politician. He was an ardently conservative right-winger. He had no formal acting training, but credited director George Cukor for teaching him everything he needed to know in his first starring role opposite Judy Holliday in 1952's The Marrying Kind. Aldo Ray's complete lack of affect, combined with that rough and raspy voice, fooled some people into thinking he wasn't much of an actor. I contend just the opposite. Ray made trained and polished actors look fake in comparison. Everything the guy did looked completely real, from smoking a cigarette to taking a beating. And he could even make some of Siliphant's overly clever dialogue sound believable. His only drawback as an actor was the way he looked. Middle linebackers didn't get offered much beyond soldiers, crooks, and saddle tramps. Even in this film, we have to drop our preconceptions to accept him as an artist. But once we get past such ingrained biases, it's impossible not to be impressed by how real the guy is on screen. I find myself coming back to Nightfall again and again, mainly to watch Aldo Ray and remind myself of the simplicity of great acting. Now, David Lynch fans out there might be interested to know that Eric DeRay, who played Leo Johnson on the original ABC series Twin Peaks, was Aldo Ray's son by his third wife, Joanna Ray, a prominent casting director who's worked extensively with David Lynch and Quentin Tarantino. Now, everything I just said about Aldo Ray applies equally to James Gregory, although he had plenty of acting training in New York and a long stage career in addition to movies and television. TV is where he really made his mark, starring in the pilot episode of The Twilight Zone in 1959, and culminating with a 7-year run as Inspector Frank Luger in the TV series Barney Miller. Okay, do me a favor and post your thoughts about Nightfall on the Noir Alley Facebook page and Twitter feed. Then come back next week for a ramshackle rarity, a 68-minute adaptation of Fyodor Dostoevsky's classic 1866 novel Crime and Punishment, updated to 1946 and produced by Poverty Row's Monogram Pictures. It's called simply Fear. I think you'll be surprised. We'll see you then.